the word discipline, it comes with a connotation of external pressure. You perceive it as someone else is disciplining you.
I asked all these teachers, every single adult hated it. They said to me, can you, a Pro D committee, okay, from a school district nearby, we don't like the word discipline. Can you change it to maybe classroom management? Because people are going to be triggered by the word discipline. I went and talked to grade 2s, grade 4s, some high schoolers, and what was fascinating is that you all liked the word. And you all thought I was talking about your own discipline, like what you just referred to, whereas all the adults take it as punitive.
My experience is that discipline is largely internal, like that feeling of you need to discipline yourself and you need to keep yourself on track with goals.
Every single young person I asked felt like it's what we need for being well-functioning adults. Hi, Allie Donaldson.
Hello, how are you?
Good. So Dr. Donaldson, I taught you in grade 1, grade 6, and grade 7, and let's just be clear, you are now Dr. Donaldson. How does that feel, saying this?
I mean, it's funny because I usually don't introduce myself like that. Like, I don't usually say, hi, I'm Dr. Donaldson. So when I hear other people refer to me as that, it still feels a little bit weird. Like, yeah. I don't know if the title's kind of set in yet, but it's surreal in a good way.
Well, you're in the perfect position to talk to me today about discipline. It is a word that people don't like. It is a word that, that discipline goes with punishment. How do I discipline and I don't want to punish? And I want to dig into that with you today. And we're going to get into the why in a second. I think that there's just so many, like more and more as our generations go on, there's just uncertainty about it. And I'm going to hang tight because I'm going to talk about after what you helped me with a presentation when I did a deep dive into all of these former students of mine about what that means. But let's first, before we launch into that, I want to talk about you in terms of, okay, I taught you in grade 1, grade 6, grade 7 here in North Vancouver. What do you want to tell me about yourself now that I don't know?
About myself now that you don't know. Well,
I think people would want to know about you.
Obviously, it's been a while since I've been your student, but we've obviously, kept in touch over the years. What my life looks like right now, so I'm, as you mentioned, I'm a physician. I finished medical school a couple of years ago, and I'm now doing residency in general surgery and based out of Vancouver, but currently kind of traveling around the province for different placements. And I absolutely love that. I've wanted to go into medicine for pretty much as long as I can remember, probably since I was your student.
You did?
Yeah.
You did. Grade 1, you wanted to be a surgeon and you wanted to go to Queen's.
Yeah, I was definitely interested in moving around for my medical education, and I'm very glad that I did. I had a great time in Ontario, got a great education, but definitely happy to be back in Vancouver. So that's kind of my day-to-day life. Residency is very demanding, especially surgical residency in terms of our hours, both at work and the demands on our time outside of work. But I still manage to make some time for my hobbies and my family outside of work. Mostly outdoor hobbies, classic North Vancouver girl, hiking, climbing, skiing, etc.
Yeah. I want to talk to you. Actually, you've got different lenses for me to talk about this whole idea of discipline. And disciplining, well, just in general terms, because I want to talk to you maybe as a physician, what you see in patients and in surgery now. Can't believe you decided surgery. I told you psychiatry.
Yeah, I know.
Surgery. Allie. I'm kidding. And also your upbringing. I actually want to dig into your upbringing, because you are now a surgeon and you have told me that your whole ability of emotional regulation is critical for what you do. So first of all, though, I want your opinion about this. And you're Gen Z. Oh gosh, how old are you now? 27?
28.
20. I'm old. 28. So tell me, why do you think that adults around hate the word discipline? And parents hate the word discipline, and teachers even more hate the word discipline.
Mm-hmm. I think that it comes with a connotation of external pressure. And I think the word discipline, a lot of the time, you perceive it as someone else is disciplining you. Someone else is telling you what you should and shouldn't be doing. And I think that my experience is that discipline is largely internal, like the feeling of you need to discipline yourself and you need to keep yourself on track with goals, etc. But I think people do recoil from the term discipline because I'm sure lots of people have had experiences where they felt like someone was disciplining them in a way that was punitive or pressure or making them feel as if they were inadequate.
Yeah. Well, so I went to you because I have a presentation I do for teachers and parents about securely attached discipline. So I know you know this about when we have secure attachment, that's how we can discipline. And I think I told you the whole story about this. I asked all these teachers and like a superintendent and people that had been around forever, and every single adult hated it. Every adult, like over the age of 40. I literally, after I spoke to you and had presented once, they said to me, a Pro D committee, okay, from a school district nearby, we don't like the word discipline. Can you change it to maybe classroom management? Because so people are going to be triggered by the word discipline. And then I went and talked to all these former students, including you. I don't know if you've seen my notes. I asked somebody to ask the grade 2s at the school you and I were at, the elementary school, grade 4s, some high schoolers, and into like different young adults. And what was fascinating, and I just think it's so like parents and teachers need to hold on to this, is that you all liked the word. And you all thought I was talking about your own discipline, like what you just referred to, whereas all the adults take it as punitive and their own experiences, and I'm going to be triggered, and I want classroom management instead, or social justice, or restorative justice. So there's a fear of it by the adults, and there's, I think, a deep-seated desire of it from all of the upcoming young adults. Mm-hmm. Have you seen that with your peers?
To be perfectly honest, like I am surrounded by like my peer group as a resident physician is a group of largely very privileged, very well-educated people who have had the supports throughout their life to facilitate them having that internal discipline and being able to focus on goals. So I think like my peer group and I probably have a slightly different perspective and perceive discipline as mostly like, as we were talking about, like kind of that internal discipline of like, how do you keep yourself motivated and keep yourself on track to achieve your goals as a learner or whatever they may be.
Yeah.
But I will say that I think in my patients, especially like coming out of COVID, there's a lot of, and you would know way more about this than I would, but I'm seeing a lot of anxiety just in the general population, adults and kids. And I wonder if maybe that contributes to adults like reticence to use the word discipline because they might feel that it's contributing to like anxiety or stress in a group of people that's already struggling more than maybe they were in the past. But yeah.
Good point. One thing I've wanted to do is switch the language. Like my whole presentation, I reclaim the word because we need it. So let's get into this now for you. So for you personally, and I know your mom and dad, they're phenomenal. You were born into privilege. I'm not talking money. You were born into a loving household that supported you unconditionally. But you also had parents that, like you and your brother, I taught both of you, you guys weren't throwing spitballs at the front of the class, which is kind of laughable thinking about both of you. But you were both, so I want like the word emotional regulation. You were both emotionally regulated. So can you talk about your upbringing in terms of what happened in your upbringing? What did your parents do right for you I'm just going to say from day one. We know that research wise. I don't want to put thoughts into minds, but we know from research this starts from day one, emotional regulation. So what they do for you that you had that early on? Because if you were born in a home where you were, I'm going to just be gentle here for the kids that this happens to, that you're watching like CSI Miami 8 hours a day as a toddler and can do what you want, you're probably going to have a different experience when I saw you in grade 1.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely did grow up with a lot of privilege in every sense of the word. But I think one of the things is that my parents always supported the things that I wanted to do. And not in the sense that they ever told me, like, because as we've talked about, I've wanted to go into medicine for a very long time. And when I would talk about these things as a kid, never once did they make it sound like I wasn't going to be able to achieve that. And so they always very much were supportive of the goals that I had, but not in the sense that they would make it seem like I could just walk up and do that. They would say, okay, you can definitely do that, but you need to make sure you get good grades and you need to do all these things. And so I think part of it was that I always felt very much like my parents believed in me. Like I never felt like I had to win their approval. I never felt like I had to win their support. Like that support was unconditional, but they were also always realistic about the things that I needed to do. And same with as a kid going to school, I never felt like they were going to be angry or disappointed if I didn't achieve the grade that they wanted or whatever it was, but I did feel that they would remind me of the work that I would have to put in to do that. So I think I always was supported in that way. In terms of emotional regulation,
can you define that? Like, what does that mean to you, emotional regulation?
I think emotional regulation to me doesn't mean that you're not experiencing your emotions. I think it just means that you're able to temper how they come out and how you project them into the world, and the ability to have big feelings but kind of put them on hold and allow yourself to maybe process them later. And obviously being in surgery, that's something that I have to do literally every single day. I'm in emotionally charged situations with people that are critically ill, family members that are upset, people coming in on the worst day of their life to the hospital that I need to look after, and then taking care of them in very stressful situations where people are, you have to think quickly, work quickly, all of these things. And I think emotional regulation to me is, again, I am stressed in those moments and I am feeling all of the big feelings that are with that. But I think for me, emotional regulation is the ability to acknowledge those things and just kind of put them on pause, not put them out into the world, and have a way to cope with them and process them when I can, not in a way that's going to be disruptive to my work or my life.
All right, can I expand on that? And then we're going to go back to your first point that I interrupted about what that did at home. Because I realized, shoot, we've got to define emotional regulation. I'm going to read later what you gave me for my presentation. I have it right here. But I think it's such a great analogy with you in surgery. You can't lose it. You can't break your nail in surgery and fall on the floor in a puddle of tears with a scalpel in your hand because your nail broke, right? You have to regulate yourself in the moment, which was what my reclamation of the word discipline is. We are teaching kids how to regulate their emotions so they just don't flip their lid and fly off the handle. So exactly what you're saying then as a surgeon. And that's listen, it's driving your car, that you can regulate yourself if you've got a really fast vehicle to not go 300 kilometers an hour and get a really expensive speeding ticket. Or O.J. Simpson, right? He got off for killing Nicole, but he stole paraphernalia in Las Vegas and got 8 or 9 years in prison. And he said, we didn't go to steal it. We just got carried away and we stole it and he got jail time. And that's emotional regulation or inability. Okay. So at home then for you, it's important to define that. And I really think that discipline is emotional regulation. So how at home then, let's move back to your upbringing. How was that emotional regulation when you were younger?
I think what it really comes down to, again, is my parents' unconditional love and support. And the fact that they never made me feel that I was going to do something that would anger them or make them not care for me. And so I think that kind of creates a safe environment to have feelings and to express them in a healthy way when you know the people around you are going to love you no matter what. So I think part of it was just I didn't grow up in an environment where I had to hide my emotions. I was allowed to experience them and express them and then kind of move forward. So I don't think I developed any sort of negative, from day one, I wasn't trying to repress my feelings or trying to not feel them. I was in a household that it was fine to feel however I was going to feel. But I think part of it also is just modeling. My parents are both pretty calm, analytical people. And I think I saw the way that they would have a stressful encounter with another person while we were out or something and act totally calm and then go home and rant about it or something. So I think it was also just modeled for me, and I was made to feel that it was okay for me to like feel what I was going to feel. I don't know. It's hard because I haven't experienced any other type of upbringing. Like, it's
Right.
hard for me to compare like what other parents might have done differently. But there was never any. I never experienced any like explicit teaching about how to regulate my emotions. I think it was I felt I had secure attachment growing up, and it was modeled for me, like how to control the way that you're feeling in the moment, and then in a healthy way, like express that later if needed.
You had a safe haven and a secure base. That's attachment theory. So it's interesting that you brought that up first, because I'm trying to dig into what was it? How is it that you're so emotionally regulated? And you never got in trouble at school, by the way, nor did your brother. I don't believe that he ever would have. But you've identified connection first. Like, that's the very first thing that you've gone to talk to me about what happened on your upbringing before, like my parents, I got grounded. I got, the list of penalties that could go on and on. You just brought up everything about connection and safety.
Yeah, and I think also, I'm sure that there's a lot of kids who maybe have emotional outbursts at school because they might not be able to express their emotions in other environments. And I think for me, like, if I did have a bad day at school, my parents would pick me up and I'd probably cry a little bit and then go home. And so I felt like there was somewhere that I could go, or a person that I could go to feel what I was feeling.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And then I'm just going to analyze and tell me what you think of this. You were connected to your mom and dad. So my guess is you wanted to please them. I say that loosely. That you weren't out probably drinking and driving until 4 a.m. on a Friday night because you were connected to your mom and dad. So your behavior aligned with that connection. What do you think of that analysis?
I think that's definitely true, but I think maybe just as equally as true, or maybe like a part of it though, is that they always kind of instilled in both me and my brother like a personal sense of responsibility. So I say that in the sense that, like, something they always taught us and really drilled into us was like, if you get an A on a test because you cheated, that is absolutely worthless. But if you got a B or a C and you genuinely did your best, that's worth so much more.
Right.
And so I think even with things like you're talking about, acting out, making stupid decisions, they always made us feel like the things that we did that were dishonest were our responsibility. And I think that is maybe why I didn't feel the same need to act out or do those types of things, because I felt like I had a responsibility to myself to act a certain way and to act respectfully towards my family and others.
So they instilled ethics in you.
Yeah.
You know what they also did that I love that they did, that actually research has proven this is successful. And this is like, I'm trying to dig too, Allie, like takeaways for parents throughout this interview, is that we know that process versus outcome is everything. So that I'm focused on your process. You worked really, really hard and you got a C+. That is so fantastic. Versus you cheated and you got an A, there's your outcome. It doesn't work. They've even found that kids cheat more if parents focus more on that outcome. There's more cheating versus you just do your best. That's fantastic.
Yeah, and I think similarly, like as you know, I grew up doing gymnastics, and I think same thing. If I did like an amazing performance that was, the best one I'd done that year, but I placed in last place, or I was, not on the podium, my parents would be so excited for me because they knew I had like performed an amazing routine and felt really good about that.
Yeah.
Whereas if I won but I didn't, do my best, then like obviously they'd be happy for me, but it wasn't the same. Like I think my family really celebrated hard work and effort, and more so than like the quote unquote wins.
They focused on the process. Here's my next question, and I still want to lean into your upbringing. Did you ever get in trouble?
I did. I mean, when I was in high school, I did try to sneak out a couple times.
Right?
And I was not very good at it and got caught every time that I tried. And honestly, they didn't punish me. They just kind of made me feel bad.
Okay.
They
Yeah.
kind of they sort of, for lack of a better term, they shamed me. Like they were kind of like, you can't sneak out. Like we need to know where you are. Like we want to know that you're safe and you're just putting yourself in danger and that's stupid. So don't do
Yeah.
that. Was kind of the way that it, and then I felt guilty and I felt bad for making my parents worried. But I never got grounded or punished. I just sort of got a stern talking to
Yeah.
about, respecting the fact that like my parents worry about me and want to know where I am.
Probably because they knew that would be enough for you, right?
Yeah.
Like they didn't need to flog you.
Yeah.
But again, Allie, I'm going to go back to this though. You're talking about connection with your mom and dad.
Yeah.
Again, right? Because some kids would go, great, F you. But you had a deep connection from the very beginning with your mom and dad.
Mm-hmm.
That you
And I
did feel
definitely,
that.
yeah, like they knew that and to this day, like I don't want to upset them. Like I feel very badly if I do something that they find hurtful.
Okay.
Like I think and vice versa. Like I think, as an adult, my relationship with my parents is very much one of like mutual respect.
Yeah.
And I think as a kid, the same thing. Like they didn't want to hurt me or upset me, and I didn't want to
Mm-hmm.
do that to them. And so them telling me that like you made us really worried, like that made me feel really bad. So
You're talking in a way like about like this. We're talking about positive discipline, what that is, right? Like if I'm a bit. Listen, you know me. I'm tough. Like I have a expectation and meet it. I don't love. Well, I gave consequences in my classroom and I give it to my kids, but what that is really depends on circumstances. Can you identify anything that does not work on the home front for teaching your kids, or if they're in trouble and they sneak out, what does not work? But that question's tricky because I think it really depends on the relationship.
yeah, I think as you said, like if I didn't have a relationship of respect with my parents in the first place, the way that they shamed me wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
have worked because I wouldn't have cared.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I the fact that I cared whether or not they were
Yeah.
upset is the reason that those discussions worked, because I didn't I didn't want to hurt them. So I think that definitely worked. In terms of things that don't work, it's a good question.
Or that you've seen in other kids. Of course, like
Yeah.
I'm not saying your parents made a single mistake in disciplining you.
Yeah, well,
Tell your
I
mother
mean,
I said that.
um, I'm sure I could think of something to complain about if I wanted to, but I won't. I will tell you something that I've seen, like having worked with kids, like in the medical
Yeah.
world, and I think this probably sort of also relates to the relationship between discipline and emotional regulation. Is some of the kids that I've seen that I've taken care of in the hospital that are struggling the most with their hospitalization or are not coping well with their illnesses are the ones whose parents are amping up the kids' emotions, if that makes sense.
Sure. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
if the kid's anxious because they're in the hospital, if the parent is piling onto that anxiety,
Yeah.
it just makes it that much worse for the kid.
Yeah.
Whereas in that moment, I think the parent needs to be a source of support. And yes, certainly the parent's anxious, the kid's in the hospital, that's totally normal. But in their interaction with the child, like they need to be there for them and supporting the kid's anxiety and trying to appease that rather than piling on their own emotions
Yeah.
associated with it. And similarly, like discipline related, because I've also seen kids that are, having a lot of outbursts and issues regulating their own emotions, especially as a medical student when I was on my psychiatry rotation and dealing with kids that were having psychiatric issues.
Yeah.
There were some very like problematic, in my opinion, parenting dynamics where the parents would, in front of the child, complain to other adults about the child's behavior. And you could see how defeated the kid would be to
Yeah.
hear their parent speak so negatively about them to another individual. So, in front of the kid, the parents would complain about what a horrible, like to the medical team, how awful the kid is, how they don't listen, and the kid's sitting right there hearing
Yeah.
all of
I'm
these
listening.
things about themselves. And so I think that probably, like, I can imagine really diminishes the trust that child has with that adult to
Mm-hmm.
know how negatively they're spoken of. And obviously, like, if you have concerns, you have to talk to your healthcare provider, but probably not in that setting in front of the kid.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's probably, the kid probably feels not respected, not supported, feeling like adults are think poorly of them.
Yeah.
And I think it's important for kids to feel like adults see them as a person and value them and like want
Yeah.
them to succeed.
You're going back to exactly where you started from. This is, I did not realize these themes would come out so strongly as modeling.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, like what you just said about like my freak out with anxiety, the parent does, the kid's going to take that on, and modeling calm and presence and just this is going to be okay and that steadiness, but also then what you've just said, it again, it's all the connection because you don't feel safe if you hear a parent going off about how awful you are. There's no
Mm-hmm.
safety in that. And there's a huge amount of disconnection in relationship
Mm-hmm.
that kid's going to not be attached as much, I think, to a parent who's going off about their behavior.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And if the kid obviously sees the negative reaction the parent has to their behavior or to their outburst, like, I
Yeah.
think they're probably going to be a lot less likely to want to express emotions to the parent if they feel that it's going to result in those kind of negative responses from them.
Oh, for sure. That's such a good thing to bring up. Is that if a kid tells you something and you use that against them later, they're
Yeah.
never going to tell you anything again because they
Mm-hmm.
don't feel safe and they are disconnected for sure. How do you feel about consequences, punishment, or natural outcomes? In your experience or with the patients that you've seen, that's an open response there. We've got punishment. We don't like the word. I actually don't ever use the word, but it's out there. Consequences or natural outcomes.
I mean, I think in a totally ideal world, we wouldn't need to use the term punishment because I
Mm-hmm.
think, like I said, knowing how your actions have impacted others is hopefully enough to make you not want to do that again.
Right.
But obviously that's really hard to actually to foster that, and like especially in kids whose brains are still developing, their social skills are still developing. They don't know how to have emotional connections with people to the same extent that a adult might. I think, like I said, I wasn't in trouble at school. I didn't really get punishments. I feel like anything that I struggled with or did wrong, it came out as a natural outcome or as a
Mm-hmm.
consequence of my
Mm-hmm.
action. And I think probably those are the best ways to learn how to regulate your behaviors.
I really think it's important too, in terms of whatever that response is, whatever you want to call it. I've always kind of thought consequence, and I'm okay with it. And I want to pause by saying, if you consider this, there is a reason we have speeding tickets. It keeps people in line. And I'm actually quite happy when I see police out because we got people speeding up and down this road here where you and I, Capilano here. And we had a death here about 10 years ago because of speeding and it was a hit and run. I want ticketing for that. It is a consequence and it is a lot of money. And I want it because A, it's safer for us, but it does deter people, not everybody, but it does deter people from speeding and it makes it unsafe for everybody. That's maybe my best example. But going back then to kids, I gave my daughter a timeout and she was terrified. And looking back now, I regret it because she had anxiety. I didn't understand. She was terrified. And for my son, he loved it. It was like, great. I get to go to my room. This is fantastic. So in my household, timeouts did not work for two very different reasons. So I had to come up with things that worked. What worked really well was stuff like screens, phones. Although we didn't have to do it a lot here. My focus as a parent was totally on connection. But if I did, it was what works for this particular child. What would be damaging? So for my daughter, it was damaging to be all alone in her room in grade, like at 6 years old, terrified. I did damage. My son, I created joy by, by the time out in the room. So
Right.
there you go. What do you say? Go ahead. Back to your response now.
I think in an ideal world, kids and people would be intrinsically motivated enough that we don't need to really use like the form of like a ticket, like something that is
Yeah.
truly just
Yeah.
a punishment. And again, I agree with you. There's a place for those types of things because I think it does deter unfavorable behaviors. But I think that in an ideal world, you foster enough empathy for other people that alone is a deterrent to
Right.
do things that will cause harm to or potential harm to
Yeah.
others. I think what you're saying about things like different punishments or consequences impacting people very differently is so true. It was totally the same growing up. I did get timeouts as a kid, and
Yeah.
I hated them, but they weren't emotionally scarring for me.
Right. So they
Like
worked
I
for
would just
you. They were good.
they worked.
They worked.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my parents would put me like have me sit at the bottom of the stairs, and I would just sit there and cry. They they were like, I have no idea how this is working. Like she can clearly just stand up and walk away, but somehow she
You just
doesn't.
stayed there. That's funny.
So, yeah, I think it's probably such a hard balance to strike of
It
like how to
is.
create a consequence or punishment
Yeah.
that will help reinforce
Yeah.
the moral or lesson that you're trying to teach
Yeah.
without having it be like scarring, like you said.
Totally. And here's the thing is you have to feel safe. I do know that for sure. It's the one thing I know for sure. If I am a parent or a teacher as well, and I am implementing a consequence or a natural outcome, that person must feel safe. There's your black and white. There's no gray area that you have to know. So for you, bottom of the stairs, my guess is that you felt safe.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I was like still in my own home that I felt safe
Yeah.
in. I
Yeah.
just was
Yeah.
in the timeout zone.
Yeah. I have a
Yeah.
friend actually, they had an adoptive child who had neglect and abandonment throughout his childhood. And one time, like she still cringes, she drove away from him as like she was upset or whatever it was and thought, I'm just going to leave you here. And she wasn't actually like dysregulated. I think she was doing it to be like, okay, well then I'm heading out, you're on your own. And it was so damaging to this kid because of his background in
Right.
that case, right?
Yeah.
So I want to read to you what you told me because I asked you, what is discipline? And I found your response absolutely poignant and something that I think we adults don't really fully, consider in this whole quest of disciplining and what that means for the future. Here's what you said. You said discipline is when I'm taking accountability for my own learning, putting in my best effort, yet maintaining a healthy balance with my education and the rest of my life. I love this, Allie. And I pause when I present this. I present this in all of the securely attached discipline presentations I do. In the surgical education world where missteps have dire consequences, it's important to have mentors who can communicate very directly with me when I've made an error or I'm not on the right track with my medical decisions. This is crucial to patient care. Yet, in order to grow and learn without being crippled by my fear of failure, my relationships with my mentors need to be secure enough to know that if I am disciplined, it's for the purpose of my own growth and that it does not influence their opinions of me as a person or as a learner. Think what you just said about your mom and dad.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
that's so powerful.
Yeah, and it's so funny because obviously when I gave you that quote, I wasn't thinking about my upbringing. But in retrospect, it really does reflect the way that I was raised as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the key takeaway is you do connection first. You connect. Okay, I always do 3 wrap-up questions to take us back to this goal of looking at discipline and how do we discipline our kids and what is this and what do we need to be doing? Here's wrap-up question number 1. What is the one thing that parents need to know who are afraid to discipline their children? What are those first steps? So the first thing to know in those first steps of those that are reticent and don't want to engage in that discipline. Or teaching emotional regulation, if we prefer to say it that way. It's the same thing, I think.
I think what I would say is that being afraid to teach emotional regulation and therefore not teaching emotional regulation is in itself teaching emotional dysregulation. Like if you don't
Good.
put some kind of effort in, then by definition, you are allowing emotional dysregulation to exist. And I think that's so much more harmful. Like, parents are human, you're allowed to make a mistake, but I think if you try to put some efforts towards helping your kid regulate their emotions, whatever you're doing, as long as, again, we've talked about not creating damaging situations, but if you're trying to help them foster emotional regulation, you're trying to model that, like, that is going to go so much further than just saying, I'm scared to do this, I don't want to do this wrong, and backing off and allowing them to persist in a dysregulated state.
That's good, Allie. Okay, here's question number 2, wrap up number 2. And I maybe am asking more for what you see in the surgical world right now. Is what is the one shift of perspective that you wish society could have about this word discipline? The shift of perspective of our culture.
As we've talked about, I think it's very important for people to see discipline as more so intrinsic than extrinsic and punitive. And I think the fact that people shy away from the word, again, underscores just a fundamental misunderstanding of how discipline can be so constructive and so positive when it's coming from an internal locus of control and an individual's own desire to discipline themselves and to be the best whatever, learner, student, doctor, surgeon, person, whatever they want to be. I think changing society's perception of it as external and negative and punitive to just someone's own goals, motivation, and discipline is important.
And you were not the only former student that when I asked that question, what do you think of discipline? You actually thought about yourselves. Me having what I need for emotional regulation in this big bad world of adulting to be able to navigate life. And an interesting thing too that came out was, like, all of the students I asked, they want to make their way in this world. And they know that without it, they're in trouble. I had one kid he's dropped out in grade 10. He's still not gone back yet. He gave me just great stuff about, I need this in myself. So I need discipline that I don't use drugs so I can get to work on time so that I can make money and support myself. Just critical. It was fascinating that the adults hated it. Every single young person I asked felt like it's what we need for being well-functioning adults, right? Okay, so last question. As a 28-year-old doctor, young woman, you're youngin' still, by the way, if I can say that. What do you think your biggest empowerment is, having been raised with discipline, self-discipline, emotional regulation, and maybe ethics and connection and modeling, all the things we talked about? Your greatest empowerment from that?
I think that having been raised with all of those things that we've talked about, I have been raised to feel like I can solve problems. I feel like I have a toolbox of life skills that it's pretty rare that I'm facing some kind of problem that I feel like I can't figure out some way through it. Whether that's I'm at work, there's some kind of medical, surgical challenge, because first of all, I know that I have tools from myself that I can use. I also know how to communicate with other people and get help from other people when I need it. And same thing with things that are happening in my life. Like, it's very, very rare that I feel frozen and stuck and like I don't know what steps I need to take to get through something, whether it's a personal challenge, work related, or anything in between.
You're set up for life. You have been set up for life by your parents.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. No, I'm very fortunate.
Yeah. Dr. Allie Donaldson, surgeon. If I need a surgeon, you're the one that I'd want to go to. You can take care of me when I'm like, 80. Payback time. Allie, thank you so much for your time.
No worries. Thank you so much for
Thank
having
you.
me.
Fun talk. Thanks for listening. Now, you can do your part and share this with a parent who wants to learn more of how to deal with this behavior at home that we don't like, that we're seeing, and that whole concept of discipline and teaching our kids what they need for the real world. You can click like on that little link below, subscribe to this channel for more to come of interviews of how we can get on our kids' turf and connect deeper. I will respond to any comment that you leave, and I'd love to hear more of what you'd like to learn about. I'll see you next time.